Hey, so today we have Manuel Rosa, an acclamated author, historian, and a scientific investigator. I'm so happy to have you on. I'm grateful for this opportunity. And without further ado, Manuel Rosa, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for the invitation. It's always good when I get a chance to talk about what I've been doing for the last 35 years of my life. So, thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, for sure. It's a topic that excites me as well, right? So I'm personally interested in it as well, and I know a lot of people when they start to discover the truth and erase certain questions that don't make sense, then they'll think, oh, wait a minute, that's right, you know. So I think it's an important topic. In my I saw you on that podcast with Miguel Milhão, and I was super fascinated about what you were talking about. And you brought everything. You brought all the facts. You brought receipts with you. So that was I was like, this guy's for real. So I was super excited, and now I got this
Yeah.
opportunity, and I want to help share it with even like a new audience. Maybe this is a it's a growing channel. Hopefully, it grows a lot, and we get to share our stories. So I guess before we get into some details, let's just like have just a little brief, like an introduction. So you were born in Portugal, right?
Yeah, I was born in a little town called Valverde and Pico, the Azores, which I like to say is the middle of nowhere. And I like to joke that if you go to Google and you search the middle of nowhere, the Azores will come up because they are really in the middle of nowhere, halfway almost between New York and Europe. So yeah, I was born there. We came to the U.S. in the mid '70s and lived in the Boston area for a while. And so while there, I learned about Columbus having married a Portuguese lady. So that's what
Yeah.
got me interested in this story.
It's exciting you say that because that particularly was what caught me. Like once I was, so I was googling like about the Portuguese navigators, and then I stumbled upon like Columbus married into high nobility in the islands. I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make
Yeah,
sense. It's not adding up. That doesn't just happen. Like
right.
that's like a Cinderella story that isn't a real one.
Walt Disney, like I like to say, that
Yeah.
happened. That would work for Walt Disney, but never in real life in Portugal in 1479. And
Oh yeah.
so, there's a pretty famous American writer, Samuel Eliot Morison, who is like seen as the expert on Columbus. And I read his book, and it's mainly half of it is invention. It's invented, and it's invented because that story never made any sense. So the biographers had to make up half of the story.
Yeah.
And you said a little while ago that things didn't make sense, like how was he lost? How come he didn't know he was in India? Things like that. And
Yeah.
it didn't make sense because the historians, the biographers, basically never did their research. They just accepted what was talked about and wrote about that as if it was real. And it was all,
Mhm.
for lack of a better word, it was all BS. And and I say that because that fantasy took me 10 years of research to dismantle. That's how bad it had got ingrained into the academic world.
Mhm.
Every expert on Columbus out there, no matter who you name, is an expert in a lie that's 500 years old. You know,
Mhm.
and just this year, two pretty well-known historians have released books in Europe. One in Portugal, José
Mhm.
Manuel Garcia, and another in Spain that I don't remember now his full name, but doesn't matter. And both of them are still writing about the lie that Columbus was Italian. That's how bad this is.
But how so obviously like obviously the Italians have their interest in maintaining it, even because it's part of their American identity, they helped discover the Americas. So they have their national interest in it and the Spanish too. But how come more Portuguese don't defend the facts?
Well, like I told
If it
you,
could be said like that.
well, there's a whole bunch of reasons why this is still ongoing. So this is
Mm-hmm.
my book I published in 2006. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it had the title "Unmasking Columbus." I could not get a U.S. publisher, so I
Mm-hmm.
translated it to Portuguese and I published it in
Yeah.
Portugal as Mistério Colombo Revelado, the
Mm-hmm.
Columbus Mystery Revealed. In this book in 2006 already had all the information proving that the story was false. So here we are 20 years later,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
The only people that know are people like you who somehow came upon it,
Yeah.
because this is not made it into the news. And not only has it not made it into the news, when I published this in Portugal, instead of the history professors in Portugal buying the book and reading it, they actually opened up a blog to attack my book without reading it, and to tell people not to buy my book. You know. And on the other hand, I
They tried
had
to discredit you.
yes, that's what they've done, for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is I had to go and do a PhD, my PhD thesis,
Mm-hmm.
dissertation, right? Columbus versus Cologne,
Uh-huh.
okay? The weaver from Italy was not the navigator from Spain.
Mm-hmm.
This is my PhD dissertation, okay?
Okay.
Proves 100% with all the documentation, all the facts, everything that anybody needs, and it's in English,
Mm-hmm.
to show 100% that the Colombo guy from Italy was not the Cologne guy from Spain. And that's why you can see the names are different. Columbus is the Italian guy, Cologne is the Spanish guy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the mistake people made, and they still make, is calling Cologne by the name of Columbus. And they do that in
Mm-hmm.
Portugal also. They call him Colombo instead
Mm-hmm.
of calling him Cologne. And so when I discovered um, in 2001, after 10 years of research, that the whole history was falsified, that we had false documentation and forged documentation from Genoa, from Italy,
Mm-hmm.
in the 1580s, right? Falsified documents to make him be from Italy. When I discovered all that, I said, "Wow, this is amazing." All I have to do is like call up, CNN or somebody in New York Times, and boom, this is going to,
They didn't want it.
explode like a atomic bomb. Well, I called newspapers. I wrote. I could not get an interview. And I had
But
all the facts. I had all the documentation. Nobody can
yeah,
contest the
yes,
documentation.
that's exactly what I was
You
gonna
know.
ask. So, because you have official evidence, like it's not, it's
Yes.
backed evidence. It's because you traveled to all of these countries to see stuff, I believe, right?
I did. I looked at all the documentation. I've looked at it. I've spent 30 years looking at it. And even now, when I look at stuff, I can still catch things that I have missed for the last 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
because the lie was so well packed together that, you take things as granted, when if you look at it a little deeper, you realize it's a lie. It's been invented. It's intentionally being misrepresented, and this even from the court of Spain, they intentionally lied to us.
Who do you think has the highest interest of maintaining the story as it is?
Well, right now I think the main problem is that nobody knows my research.
Mm-hmm.
No, my editions, like this book, is 150 uh, books that were printed.
Oh yeah,
So, 150 people know it's my
yeah.
dissertation. 150 people in the world have all the evidence, all in one place that they can show to anybody else to say, yeah, the history was all false. So that's one big problem, is that even though I've published 13 books, and
Oh,
each one of them is sufficient to take anywhere and show that the history was false. Very few people have been able to. Very few people have read. Mainly in Portugal is the main place where my
yeah.
most of my books have been published. And so, as far as people having an interest in keeping the story the way it is, I think once they read the facts, they will not have an interest in keeping the story as a lie. That would not make any sense. Then it would be very dishonest to have the evidence that the story is a 500-year-old lie, and they'll still want to keep the lie, or still want to support the lie, right? I think the
Yeah.
main reason is that they haven't read. They haven't read because they believe the story was correct, and they feel like they don't want to waste their time reading my research. Well, I can guarantee them that my research proves the history was false. Matter of fact, I don't think I have that letter here next to me, but when I published my first book in Portugal, a year after I published the book, I got a letter from Professor Joaquim Veríssimo Serrão. So Veríssimo Serrão was, a top historian in Portugal. He was a university professor. He was the president of the Portuguese Academy of History for like 20 years. And I got a letter from him typed on the old typewriters, and it said, I read your book, and then I reread your book, and I have to say I'm 100% in agreement with you. So this is 2007, you see. If all the other history professors in Portugal had done what Joaquim Veríssimo Serrão did and read my research instead of opening up blogs to attack my research as, as selling, calling me a quack and as selling
Yeah.
fraud, fraudulent research and that kind of stuff. If they had instead read the book, which is all I ever asked, I don't mind you criticizing the book, read it, tell me where I'm wrong, and I will, explain why that's wrong, or why, I took that direction. But instead, they attacked my book, and to this day, they have refused to read. And so, as far as other people wanting to keep the history, the false story, I can
Yeah.
understand that the Italians would not like to know the truth.
For sure.
It's someone they have taken on as a hero,
Yeah, that's right.
but he was never from Italy. So it's not their fault. It's not the fault of the present day Italians that 500 years ago, some
A lie was
Colombos
told.
from Italy decided to forge documents to take the Cologne guy and say that he was born in Italy. And those forged documents fooled historians for 500 years, for until today.
So did they try using uh a another person's identity? Like, was there a real Cristobal Colombo, but he was just in Italy? Or they completely just tried to shift it?
Well, you see, that's where things get a little gray because I'm not sure. You see, a lot of the Colombo documents from Genoa are false. Okay,
Mhm.
that's the first thing. So we got to start there. Now, whether there ever was a Cristoforo Colombo in Italy, in Genoa,
Mhm.
I don't know because I haven't. It doesn't matter to me. He's not the guy who sailed in
Yeah.
1492, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't gone to research that deep to verify
Yeah.
whether or not Cristoforo Colombo ever lived in Genoa or if all the documents are all falsified, but half of
Mhm.
them are falsified. The important ones are false. So, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter about the other ones.
Your
So
your
if
main
there,
I
say
cut you off
something,
by an accident, sorry.
that's fine. So I'm beginning to doubt that there ever was a Cristoforo Colombo in Italy because, if there was, why would they need to falsify the other documents, And
Mhm.
so the ones that I've proven are false. So the main document that's falsified in the late 1500s is the last will that all the historians use to say Columbus was born in Italy, right?
Mm.
So when these investigators started to look into where Columbus was from, well, I guess I should back up a little bit.
Okay.
So the guy that sailed for Spain in 1492
Cologne.
was called Cristobal Colon in Spain, right? Matter of fact, nobody that speaks Spanish, all the Latin American countries, Spain, all those countries
Yep.
have no idea who Columbus is, right? Because they call him Colon.
Mhm.
He was never called Colombo or Columbus during his lifetime in Spain. So we've had a parallel identity. We've had Colón in Spain and all the Spanish-speaking countries, and we've had Columbus and Colombo and Colomb, in other countries. That's all a variant of Colombo and Columbus. That is not his name, right? So when the name got corrupted in 1493, and all the people outside of Spain learned the wrong name, right? They never learned that his name was Colón. In 1493, when they sent out the press release about the first voyage of discovery of the New World, they printed it in Latin in Rome. And when they printed it in Latin, they changed the name Colón to Colombo. Okay, so they made a mistake in the name in 1493, and when they printed those letters and they sent them out to everybody who was interested in reading the news about the discovery, everyone who read this Latin letter learned the name Colombo. You see, everyone outside of Spain. That's why we call him Columbus in the U.S. So, so they learned the wrong name. That's the first thing. So they had no idea. If you go up to anyone in the street, and, where you are or in America, say, who was Colón? Do you know who Colón was? Cristóbal Colón. You know who he was? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Of course they don't know because they never learned the correct name. So,
that's right.
Right. So what happens is people start to look for Colombo. They start to look for this guy called Colombo because they thought that was his initial name.
Yeah.
And they go to look in Italy, and like I said, I doubt that the Christopher Colombo guy really existed. But even if he did, he was a peasant weaver, which is not the person who sailed in 1492. Now, in 1578. 1578, the discoverer's grandson, Don Luis Colón, who was Duke of Veragua, Marquis of Jamaica, Admiral of the Indies, and all these other titles that the family had and still has. When he died without leaving a legitimate male heir, 1578, sorry, 1578, all of the discoverer's descendants opened up a lawsuit to see who was going to be the next heir to inherit all this fortune. So they had to, bring up genealogies and all this stuff. And to figure out, the court had to decide who they were going to award the titles to. You can imagine, it's a bad example, but you imagine King Charles of England dies and he doesn't have two sons, he doesn't have Harry or William. And so he dies, and they're like, "Wait, who's going to be the next person to be king?" There's going to be, some kind of struggle to figure out, who we're going to put on the throne. So that's a bad example, but it's something like that.
I get it. Yeah.
So when the discoverers, I call him Columbus, but just know that I'm talking about Colón and not the weaver.
Yeah.
So when all these descendants, like Colón's grandchildren, great grandchildren, started to fight each other in court for who was going to take over the inheritance. The Colombos from Italy said, "Wait a minute, they say he's from Italy. We better go and try to steal this." So they did. The three people came to Italy, to Spain, three Colombos. The one of them, there's not too much about. He was, he didn't even make it into the documentation. One guy, Bernardo Colombo, had a false genealogy, right?
Okay.
So they sent him packing. The other guy, Baltazar Colombo, who was a nobleman, and all these documents are provided by the city of Genoa, by the government, because the government is also going to collect some share of this inheritance.
It
Genoa.
all starts at the top of the source.
Right. So the other guy, Baltazar Colombo, came with a last will dated February 22, 1498, where it's supposed to be from the discoverer, and it says, "I was born in Genoa, and from there I left." Right? And so when I started to investigate this, and I read, as much as I could, and I'm like, wait a minute, this guy is not from Italy. He's not from Italy. He doesn't write Italian to anyone, even to Genoese guys that are his friends in Spain. Friar Gaspar Gorizio, who came over to Spain, to Seville in 1490. He writes to him in Spanish with Portuguese words. And I'm like, wait a minute, if Friar Gaspar is from Genoa and the discoverers from Genoa, why aren't they writing between themselves in Italian or Genoese? Why is the discoverer writing in Spanish with Portuguese words? So that didn't make sense. And then he never said where he was from anywhere. He always tried to hide that because he was there was a big reason why both the court of Portugal and the court of Spain were helping to hide his father. So, things didn't make sense. I'm like, wait, this doesn't make sense. If he's trying to hide his whole life, he changed his name when he went to Spain to hide where he was from. He never said in any document where he was from. And then, his son, when he wrote his father's story in 1539, so 33 years after the discoverer died, his son wrote his father's life, and he said, well, my father always wanted his lineage and place of birth to be kept secret. But
Yeah,
he's
can
already
be.
told everybody he's already told in the last will in 1498 that he was born in Genoa.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like, wait a minute,
convenient.
doesn't make any
Yeah, it
sense,
doesn't make
right?
sense. Yeah.
So that really, was a problem for me because I read all kinds of transcriptions in French and Portuguese and Italian and English and, in Spanish, and they all said the same thing, but then there are things in this last will that are not that you can tell it's a forgery. I mean, you can tell it's a forgery because the document was written in February 22, 1498, and in that document he is asking the prince, so Isabel and Fernando's son, Prince Don Juan, I beg Prince Don Juan to enforce my rights. When I'm died, I beg, Isabel and Fernando and Prince Don Juan, the heir, to enforce my rights. Well, the heir had died like 4 months prior. I think October 1497. So I'm like, why is he asking a dead prince to enforce his rights? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So I contact, because all of the stuff I try to get, some academics involved in this, and I contact them. I would say, listen, you say that the reason we know he's from Italy is because of his last will, but I'm looking at his last will, and he's asking a dead prince to enforce his rights. It doesn't make any sense. How do you explain that? Well, that's because this is what they do. They invent, okay? Instead of saying, wait a minute, yeah, you're right. This doesn't make much sense. We should look at that. They say, no, it's because that's a draft. He wrote that while the prince was still alive, and then he signed it, in 1498. Say, you sure? I mean, it doesn't make much sense. Well, either that or he was not in Spain, so he didn't know the prince had died, right?
Yeah.
I said, okay. So then I did some more research, and I found out that he knew the prince had died pretty much the time the prince had died, because the son wrote, and in such and such a date, my father sent me and my brother to be pages of the queen, because we were pages of the prince who had died, right? So now I have proof that the discoverer knew the prince had died because he sent his sons to be pages of the queen, because the prince had died. So that excuse is out the window. But there's another thing I wanted to say.
Let's get it.
So, this guy is in Spain, and in May of 1492, before he had done anything, the Queen of Spain makes his son, Portuguese-born Don Diogo, makes his son a page at the court of the prince heir, right? So the document is still, the document actually still exists. The queen writes a note to the head of the queen's household. I'm going to take Don Diego Colon as a page to my son. He's going to be a page, and we got to pay him, whatever. And you're like, wait a minute, but this is a poor peasant wool weaver's son from Italy. How can his son be made a page at the court? What's going on here? You know.
Yeah,
So that's another thing why things didn't make sense.
yeah, for sure.
So after I was very certain that the history was false, and the only thing standing my way was his last will, I'm saying to myself, well, okay, I can explain this last will very easily because he changed his name when he went to Spain. He did not want anyone to know where he was from and who his family was. So in his last will, he is lying intentionally to deflect us from wherever he is. He's saying, I was born in Genoa, look for me over there,
Yeah, yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
So that's how I was explaining this. Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, that's the only way I can explain this document, right? Is that he wrote this document lying that he was born in Genoa, because because in reality he was actually hiding his identity. So that would help him to, if people went to look for him in Italy. But I
hmm
said, okay, I have to go to Spain and look at this document, because up to that point um, I had only seen transcriptions, And
yes.
so I fly to Seville. I go to the Archive of Indies, and I asked them to bring me the document. I want to see Cristóbal Colón's last will, and they brought it to me. The lady brings it to me, and she says, "Well, this is it here," and she just shows me. And she just shows me that, like, I just look at I look. She's still holding it. I'm looking at the first. I said,
I want to read it.
I just looked at the first page. Like, I said, okay, thank you. I'll go back to the U.S. now, because that's a forgery, you know? And so,
Yeah.
and the reason I knew it was a forgery without even looking at anything else, right, is the first word of the document. You see, the first word, I don't know if you can see it,
It's a
but
little blurry on my end right now.
that says traslado, okay?
Okay.
Traslado in Spanish is copy,
Ah.
okay?
So it wasn't an original. Yeah.
Not only was it not an original, if it had been a copy of a real document, it would have to be notarized by a notary to have any
Exactly.
value, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
because it's a forgery, they didn't get it notarized. But aside from that, there's other things in the document that I am looking in the book again to see if I can find it. You see, everything I do, I do with documents. This is the first letter, the letter of announcement of
Mm.
that I told you that was written printed in
Yes.
Spain, in Rome. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you see, you can see all kinds of variants of the name.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it really has no standard for the name. They just make up whatever as they go along. But this last will, aside from being a copy, so when I saw Traslado, I said, oh, okay, well, he never wrote that. Now it makes sense. Um, So I had that information, and I started to again contact, some academics, some professors, and try to discuss this with them, And they're like, "Well, yeah, but that's it's common, that they would make copies, traslados of things." I said, "Yeah, but not without a notary,
Exactly.
not
It's authenticated.
without
Yeah.
having a notary. You don't just put it on your lap and make a copy and then try to pass it off as a real thing. But not only that." So we had Traslado,
And
and it
where
was
was
so
this
easy.
document? Where did you have to go
This
to see it?
document, this document's in Seville,
Uh,
the Archive of the Indies,
mhm.
the Archive of Indies in Seville.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to see if I can find it here, because this is pretty funny too. Not just the word traslado, and the reason is, you see, if you're an investigator, or a historian, whatever you are, I'm a detective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you're going to investigate history, you have to investigate it like a detective. You cannot just, read something and say, well, okay, that seems to make sense. And so I have cases where I have Cologne writing a letter about the same incident to two different people and lying to the second person. So he writes to his friend Gaspar Goricio, who was actually a co-conspirator with him. To him, he tells the truth, and then he writes to the king and queen, and he lies. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are you lying?
That's
Why are you lying to
interesting.
them?
That's interesting.
So here it is. I'm going to see if I can center this over there. You see the date?
1498?
1598 with a
1598.
4
Yeah, yeah, I
over
see it.
it.
Yeah, yeah. 1598.
With a
Yeah.
4, with a 4 over it. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So that's the document that was supposedly written in 1498. Here is the signature that's supposed to be his signature. This is supposed to be Columbus' signature, Colon's signature, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but this is a copy. How is a dead man signing a copy of his document?
Impossible.
Right? Okay. So so like I said, this thing gave me a lot of headaches because I knew the content in it. Half of it was made up, was invented. Like
Yeah.
the prince enforced my will and this stuff, and a lot of it is not. You could tell it's a forgery. Even in this document, there is a statement that says, "I order my descendants, my heir, to buy shares in the Bank of St. George in Genoa because it's very safe money and they're paying 6% interest." I'm like, well, okay, let's go investigate what the interest was in 1498. It was 4%.
Yeah, lots of stuff aren't
Okay,
adding up.
right? So I
Yeah.
said, wait, well, the shares were not 6%, or 4%. Not only that, the bank was closed to new shareholders the whole time that his son was alive and his grandson was alive. The bank was closed to new shareholders. So that's how insecure the bank was, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, I had already done that research beforehand to look and really verify there was a forgery. So I said, okay, this is all I need. It's a forgery. So I start contacting again some historians, some
Yeah,
experts,
I get it. I
Genoese
get it. I
Colombo
get it.
experts,
Yeah.
not the not the discoverer not experts on the discoverer, but experts on this fake story. And I start telling them, listen, I have this. The document is a copy. It is not notarized. I have the date for 1598 with a 4 over it. The signature, they have a dead man signing the signature, signing this document. Because you would never put this, you would never forge someone's signature on a copy of anything.
Yeah.
The notary would say it was signed by such and such a person.
Exactly.
It would. So I have all this stuff. So this document is a forgery. you know. Well, then you still haven't proven that it's really a forgery. I mean, there could be other explanations, whatever. Okay. So now I go back into digging more into the document. Turns out that when this document was presented by that Baltazar Colombo
Yeah.
in the tribunal, in this court case for the inheritance, right? So
Yeah.
the court case for the inheritance lasted from 1478 until 1609. 30 years they were in litigation for who was going to be the next admiral of the Ocean Sea and Duke of Veragra and whatever. 30 years is a long time to make a lot of the false forgeries.
Oh, for sure.
So what happens when all that stuff, all that whole process is documented, is documented. So when this document comes up, the tribunal said, this thing is worth as much as a blank piece of paper. Right? And it
Yeah.
was thrown out of court. So all historians for the last 300 years who have been using this last will as their proof that the guy had said he was born in Italy
And it
are
was
using
already
a forged
discredited 300 years ago.
400 years ago. They're using a document that was discredited 500 years ago. 1580, more or less, 1580. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm up against.
Okay.
Is that I have all the evidence, all the proof that the history was falsified, and that the historians, none of them did their work because they never went back to the original documents, They just built on top of each other. One guy laid the foundation stone for the castle in the air,
Yeah.
and all the other ones just kept piling up on it,
Okay,
and it was
yeah.
still in the air. It doesn't matter how many
One big
people pile
mess.
on, there's no foundation for it. So,
So since okay, so far, let's say it's safe to say he's not Italian. What is the
he's
Polish
not Italian,
claim? Yeah,
huh?
that's right. But the Polish, I think, have a claim too. I think, right?
That's my theory.
Yeah,
That's what the evidence that I have discovered. Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm. But
My
then there's also like between like if he's Portuguese or Spanish. So if he's already faking his identity in Spain and they don't even know who he is, that suggests he's not Spanish.
well, no correction. The court knew who he was.
Mm.
Anyone who was anyone in Spain
Hmm.
knew who the discoverer was the minute he crossed the border.
Okay.
Okay, because he
Yeah.
was a very high nobleman in Portugal. You
In
see,
Portugal, that's right. Yeah,
when
that's right.
when he crossed the border to Spain in 1484, he went to live with the Duke of Medinaceli in Cadiz.
Okay.
Okay, so the Duke hosted him. Do you
Okay
think
then.
the
Yeah.
Duke is going to host someone? It's just like, hey,
No, he's
come
not
and
gonna
stay
hook
with
for
me,
nobody.
right?
But that's because
No,
yeah. So he
he
knew that
he
he was
stayed.
coming from high nobility in Portugal already.
Yes, of course. The Duke of Medinaceli hosted him for 2 years. Not only
Hmm.
did he host him, he's the one who tried to put him in touch with the court to
Hmm.
get to sponsor the voyage.
Hmm. Yes.
And so when as soon as it comes to Spain, anyone who's anyone knows who he is, right?
Okay.
Okay, I'll give you another example. The richest, most powerful duke in all of Spain at the time was the Duke of Medina Sidonia. He's the guy. He's the Duke of Seville. Seville was his territory and some other places. The Duke of Medina Sidonia is the most powerful duke in all of Spain. The most powerful, nobleman in all of Spain. Okay. Before the discoverer went to Spain, the Duke of Medina Sidonia had already given the discoverer's sister-in-law a house and land in Seville. Okay.
Mm.
So his sister-in-law, who's born in Portugal, is daughter of the captain of the island of Porto Santo in Madeira, sister-in-law Violante Muniz, is already living in Seville in a house and land given to her by the richest, most powerful man in Spain. Okay. Do you think they have connections?
For sure.
Do you think that this woman's brother-in-law, who Colon was, this
Hmm.
Violante Muniz brother-in-law, when he comes to Spain, people don't know who he is? You think he can hide?
No,
You
no,
think he
for
can go to
sure.
Spain and hide his real identity
So
when his sister-in-law
for
can
sure.
tell who he is,
Yeah, of course. So
right?
so tell me something. When they were in Lisbon in the era when they were like, you know how when they would go down the south when they would go down the coast of Africa and they would come
Yeah.
back, like he was in Lisbon for a while learning about the new advancements and so on, right?
Well, he's
During that
born in
era?
Portugal, so he's born in Portugal. He was integrated in all of that.
Hey, of
Okay,
course.
he
That's
was
what I'm trying
just
to
as
get.
integrated. He was just as integrated as Vasco da Gama, as Álvares
Yep.
Cabral, as
Yes.
Corte Real, as Bartolomeu Dias, as
Because
Fernando Magellan. They were all
mhm,
integrated in navigation because that was the kingdom's high tech of the day,
yes.
right?
So
What
that's what I
what
wanted to
happened at
ask
that
you.
time,
Mhm.
what was going on at that time, that was the leading edge industry in the kingdom. It was
Yes.
navigation, it was discovery,
Yeah.
right? And so all these up and coming, noblemen, whoever, and peasants who wanted to, be anything, this is what the industry they wanted to get into.
So because Portugal was at the tip of the spear and like the key to the Atlantic Ocean, would it wouldn't be normal that they would have foreigners learning with us, right?
Well, there were foreigners involved, sure.
Yeah.
There were foreigners involved, but there were foreigners that they could trust.
Hmm.
So they wouldn't just, for someone, most Spanish would not be involved because Spain was a natural enemy of Portugal
It was a
since the
direct
beginning of
competitor.
Portugal. But there were a lot of Italians, because because of commerce. There were people from Florence. There
Mhm.
were people from Milan, and from Genoa, and so they were integrated as long as they could be trusted. So that's there were some. I mean, there's some documented foreigners that took place. There's also some documented foreigners who were arrested for going to sail in the coast of Africa without permission, and got arrested. There were some that were thrown overboard as soon as they were found. They were just thrown overboard, so they would not be able to go back home and tell them any secrets of what was going on.
Mhm.
So that was very well covered, protected. Um, there was a nation's industry, and the project was very well protected by the crown and by the citizens.
Mhm. Yeah, so it wouldn't make sense for them to be inviting like a high person of status from Spain to learn about their advancements, like for the narrative
He's
trying
not
to
from
prove that he
Spain.
was
Forget
Spanish,
about that.
right? Yeah, exactly.
He's not from Spain. Forget about that. Okay.
No, I know. I'm just trying to like showcase the distinction, like how it's not possible.
Well, no, there's a lot of theories going around. There's about 20 theories, right, of who he
Okay.
was, and they just had a documentary released a year ago, which
Mhm.
took them a couple of years to do because they were doing DNA tests on the bones, and I was invited to participate in that
Yeah.
documentary, but I decided not to participate because they did not want to follow a pretty rigorous scientific method that I wanted to follow. And also because I did not have bones to test. So I backed out of participating in it, even though they insisted that I should. As the world number one expert on cologne, they it would have been helpful to have me there, but it would have just been wasting my time because it would not have advanced my work any further than
Yes.
than what I needed to go. So all the people they tested were negative. All the bones they tested were negative. So that disproved, 5 or 10 different theories already.
All right.
And then and a lot of the theories don't really make any sense, because there's no, aside from not having any, it doesn't not fitting into the actual life of the discoverer. The fact that they say he was son of a princess of Portugal, the
Mhm.
princess of Portugal who got pregnant with a lover, and then went to become emperor, married the emperor of Rome. The Holy Roman Emperor, right, Frederick, and had to hide Columbus, had to hide the discoverer. You know, but wait a minute, but the discoverer had two brothers. How does she got pregnant 3 times? You know, you know what I mean? Like things that don't make
Yeah.
sense. So anyway, there's now this thing about him being a Jew, Sephardic
Yes.
Jew from Valencia, right? That's what came out of that documentary.
Yeah.
So what they did was they tested all the bones they had. They were all negative because I could have told them ahead of time they're all going to be negative because none of those things fit.
Mhm.
And when they came to the last theory, which was that he was a Cologne guy from Valencia, because there was a Cologne family in Valencia, right? Cologne with an M, Cologne
Yeah.
with an M, which
I
is the
saw it written
same
in the
as
document.
Sorry?
When you showed the document, I saw one
Oh,
written with an M too. Yeah.
right. So what happens is this is where investigators need to be careful. You see, because you can get tricked very easily if you're not careful, right?
Mhm.
So Cologne with an N, right? Is like where we get our colon semicolon from.
Yeah.
Colon semicolon, same thing. Comes from the Greek, right? So the Latin got colon semicolon from the Greek, and that's where the English got our colon semicolon. So the name colon or colon in Greek also means member, right?
Mhm.
One of the definitions is member. And the son said, "My father chose the name colon because in Greek it means member."
Mhm.
So we know where the name came from. It shows
Uh-huh.
member in Greek, right? So the Colom with an M, Colom, is Catalan for pigeon. You
Pigeon.
see?
Mhm.
Yes. Colom with an M in Catalan is the same as Colombo in Italian and the same as Columbus in Latin. All
Mhm.
those three things mean pigeon, right? So there was a Colon family in Valencia, apparently, a Jewish family, who had the name Colon, Colom. And so
Mhm.
this guy in Spain, in Valencia, came up with this theory that the navigator was from this Colon, this pigeon family, Colon pigeon family from Catalan, and that's why he was hiding his identity, because he
Okay.
was a Jew and the Inquisition was going on and he did not
Yes,
want to be persecuted, right?
I heard that
Well,
theory.
there are so many failures with that theory that it's laughable, because the name was pigeon, it was Colon for member in Greek and not Colon for pigeon in Catalan,
Mhm.
right? He was not hiding himself from anybody because everybody knew who he was. The Duke of Medina Sidonia knew who he was. The Duke of Medina Celi knew who he was. Queen Isabel knew who he was. King Fernando knew who he was. So he could not be hiding. He could not be hiding from King Fernando that he was a Jew if King Fernando knew who he was.
Mhm.
You know what I
Did
mean?
he? Did he look like they portray in the pictures?
Oh boy, I'll show you what he looked like. So there were two painters in Spain that painted him. Okay,
Mhm.
one was Pedro Berruguet. Pedro Berruguet died in 1504. The discoverer
1504.
died in 1506.
So he's blonde
This is Berruguet's painting.
of him.
Okay,
So blonde and pale.
when Berruguet died, Alejo
Uh-huh.
Fernandez took over as court painter,
Uh-huh.
and this is Alejo Fernandez's portrait of the discoverer.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the discoverer, three people, I think two different people, no, three. Las Casas, his son, and another guy, Oviedo, I think, described what he looked like. Taller than average, reddish blonde hair, blue eyes, a pointy, eagle-like nose, white skin with freckles, and he burnt easily in the sun. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is why the cover of my book, you know,
Yeah.
has got them side by side. You see,
Yeah. Quite different.
um, the guy that we see the picture of with the three-pointed hat, that was painted. That was painted 13 years after he died in
Mhm.
Italy, where no one had ever seen them in their lives. Right.
But it was to make him look a little more Italian, no? A little more olive skin.
Well, what I'm saying is that was painted by somebody who had never seen them.
Yeah,
Right.
but he imagined if he's Italian.
Right. Right. But I don't even think that painting was initially of him. I think someone just put his name on there and sold the
Oh,
painting. You
oh
know.
wow.
And so I think the painter just painted. Whatever, Antonio Ferrari, and
Yeah,
then,
they
oh, I could
attached
sell this as
his
Columbus,
identity
let's
to
put the
that
name here.
painting. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, so they attached like his identity to that painting that they thought would be a
Right.
good market for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the Metropolitan bought the painting for a lot of money, and now they don't call it Columbus anymore. Say portrait of a man thought to be Columbus. Well, I can tell you
Oh,
it's not
so
Columbus.
now,
It's
so
not.
they re
You
they
know.
fixed the title?
Yeah, yeah. So so it's never been Columbus. That this guy behind me, you
Yeah.
see, that's not
Yeah, yeah,
Columbus.
yeah.
You see,
That's the guy, that's the
that guy
famous picture,
there,
yeah.
that guy there doesn't in no way, it looks like these guys.
Yeah,
So anyway,
for sure.
so we know what it looks like because it was described. We know that painting of him when he was still alive, and we know that everyone in the court knew who he was. The queen would not make his son a page at the court if you had no idea what
For
his
sure.
lineage was, you know?
So,
The Duke of Medina Sidonia would not have given his sister-in-law a house and land if she was not an
mhm,
important person in Portugal, you know?
yeah. So in 1488, when like Bartolomeo
Yeah,
rounded the Cape of Tormentas, uh,
yeah. Hmm.
when that happened, he was already in Spain, right?
Yes.
And
He went to Spain
and
in 1484.
yeah, so he was working. He was trying to convince the court to go westward to go to India. That's the story, right?
He was trying to convince the court to go westward. Didn't tell him it was India at that time.
Yeah, yeah. Because he knew it was in India already, right?
Yes, of course.
Because even like, what do you have to say about, for example, who was it? The guy who discovered Newfoundland, the fisherman, João Vaz Corte Real.
Well, Corte Real, yeah, they were up there, but that was already in the 1500s.
No, I thought that was in the 1470s.
Um,
The
I
fisherman.
don't remember this 1470 voyage. I
Because
know
there's a
that.
claim, there's some museum here in Toronto, Portuguese
Yeah.
museum that has some documents claiming that he was there, and I saw it online, but I tried going there, but it was closed. So I would really love to go
Okay.
look for it for myself. But they claim like he has an older claim than Columbus because it was in the 70s that they had come here fishing to the
And and
Newfoundland.
and and Portugal has an older claim than Corte Real. Portugal has an older claim than Corte
Mm.
Real. So
Yeah.
Columbus himself was in the Bay of Fundy in February of 1477.
Hmm.
He left us that note saying that he had sailed over there.
Hmm.
And Corte Real was ordered in 1473 to sail to the islands that are west of Cape Verde Islands,
Yeah.
right? So in 1473, Corte Real was ordered to go again to those islands that are west of the Cape Verde Islands. Okay,
Which is
that's the
already the
Caribbean.
American. Yeah, the
That's the
Caribbeans. Yeah.
Caribbean. That's the Caribbean. That's where the 1492 voyage sailed to.
Wait.
Okay, 1492 voyage. The Discoverer had a map of the islands he was sailing to.
Hmm.
And if you read his diary of the board, his ship's log, he will tell you the 7th of October, whenever it was. He said, and the captain of the Pinta is looking over the map, by our calculations, the islands should be over here. We should
Hmm.
be right near these islands. You know,
Yeah.
so it was not a voyage of discovery; it was a voyage of propaganda to let Spain know the land was already there, that the
Hmm.
land was there, that they knew was already there. But I wanted to go back to
Yeah.
1424. So
Okay.
there is a map that we call the Antilles map, which is the 1424 map, that is actually right now the head my page on my Facebook at the top of my
Okay.
page,
Okay.
because I actually figured out, and I had been pondering this for a long time. I saw the map in 2001. It's at the
Mhm.
James Ford Bell Library in Minnesota, and I flew over there to go look at the map, which is like I don't know, 4 feet by 3 feet or something, like pretty big. And I went to look at it in person because I wanted to. I try to look everything in person. I don't want to. I don't want to look at anything with anybody else's eyes. And
Put a lot of
so,
time and resources into all this investigation, huh?
yes, I have spent over $150,000 on this in 35 years,
It's safe to
and I
say
can
that
tell.
you are the person in the whole world probably has the most time and dedication and resources spent investigating his life.
Yes, yes.
That's impressive.
So
That's
right now, I'm the
amazing.
world expert. Right now, I am the only person alive who's an expert on the navigator's
That's
life. Okay,
amazing.
there's lots of experts out there on the
No,
Italian
I
guy.
know. Everyone's an expert
You know,
nowadays, but you are an actual expert. You're a
no, there's
scientific
lots of
investigator.
experts on the Italian guy,
Oh,
the
I get it.
weaver. You understand? There's
Yes.
lots of experts on the weaver who they
Yes.
say transform themselves with a fairy godmother into a navigator. But that's just not true. That's all an invented story.
Mhm. I
Oh, so I said
Yeah,
that I have spent 35 years
yeah,
and over $150,000 on this of my own
exactly.
money. when I'd go on vacation, I'd go to an archive, and spend 2 weeks somewhere. And so, and I really have no return on this, it's just, money spent. But no one would finance this. I contacted universities and whatever, I'm investigating Columbus. I've discovered some stuff. Looks like, we have a false story. Columbus already settled. That was settled a long time ago. That's a done
I know
issue,
there's no
move
interest in.
on,
I know,
move on.
but
Well,
apparently not even in our own country they're interested in pushing it.
no, no. And actually, I just had a book published by the Portuguese Navy, the
Yeah,
Academia Marinha, the publishing arm of the Portuguese Navy, Columbus in the Crosswinds.
the crosswinds.
Okay. And the reason this book was published by the Portuguese Navy is that the Portuguese admiral of the fleet, Henrique
Okay.
Gouveia Melo, right?
Okay.
Henrique Gouveia Melo read this book.
Mm-hmm.
So the admiral of the Portuguese fleet read my book, and they contacted me and said, we want you to do a shorter book that the admiral can offer to people when he goes overseas,
Nice.
with some details of the true story of Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how this book was published last year
Book.
in English.
Oh, so that
Because
one's
in
okay.
English,
Perfect. I was gonna ask you, can
because
all of your books be found in English?
I'm sorry.
Is there an option of all of your books in English or only Portuguese? Some of
No,
them. Yeah.
this is the only one you're going to find in English. Columbus: The Untold Story from
Okay.
2016. This book was named Best World History Book in 2016.
But
Columbus in the
where can
Crosswinds.
that one be found for people that like don't read
Columbus
Portuguese?
in the Crosswinds. It's the Portuguese Navy's website.
Okay.
Okay, this is
Okay.
a a very reduced.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is a Reader's Digest of Columbus: The
Yeah.
Untold Story.
Yeah. I get it.
If you want to spend your time learning about Columbus, you have to get this one.
This one.
A-
And this one is
And
on your site?
my site, you go to columbus-book.com,
Mm-hmm.
columbus-book.com, Columbus
Okay.
dash book.com, and you can order it there. Now, if you just go to
This is
my
what we gotta
website, there'll
try
be
and get
link.
people to read.
If you go to my website,
Yeah.
there'll be links to that,
Okay.
So these are the
I'm gonna
books that
put
are
a
changing
link in
history.
the video. I'll put a link in the end for sure.
So my website's very simple, mdrosa.com.
Okay.
Okay, mdrosa.com. And from there, you click about the author's webpage, and you will be able to get all the other stuff. So mdrosa.com
Okay.
is the website for my doctoral thesis, right?
Okay.
Columbus versus Cologne. But
Yes.
from that page, you can go to all the other links are
All
on
right.
there.
Beautiful.
So anyway, so that's where we are. We have proof, evidence, everything that the guy he was not hiding from the kings, because the kings knew who they were, who he was the minute he walked into Spain. He was not Jewish, he was a
Mm-hmm.
Christian, and he was not Jewish because the queen would not have made a son of a Jew, a Jewish
Yeah.
guy,
Makes
page
sense.
at the court,
For sure.
and he was high nobility in Portugal because the woman that he married in Portugal, Filipa Muniz, was daughter of the captain of Porto Santo, which at the time was actually sister of the second captain who became captain in 1473, who was daughter of the first captain, Bartolomeu
Mhm.
Porto, right? Who died, I think, in 1455. She was sister-in-law of the second captain, Pedro Correia da Cunha, who took over, who was married to her half-sister.
Mhm.
And then she was sister of the third captain, Bartolomeu Porto II, who
Mhm.
took over as captain in 1473. So when she married in 1479, her brother was captain of the island.
Okay.
And her brother-in-law, Pedro Correia, went on to become captain of the island of Graciosa in the Azores. but more importantly, he was one of the 25 bodyguards of King John II of the Royal Guard, right? And her cousin was the Countess of Abranch. She was married to the Count of Abranch, who was the captain of the Royal Guard.
Mhm.
Okay, so she has a brother-in-law who's one of the captains of the one of the Royal Guards, and a cousin married to the captain of the Royal Guard. Then she has another countess. That's another cousin. She has another countess who's another cousin who's a marquesa.
Mhm.
That's from the father's side. From the mother's side, she has another countess. Okay, and her half sister, the one who I just said her husband was the bodyguard, Royal Guard. Her half sister was cousin to another countess, to the Duchess of Braganza.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have in the family the Colon's wife is cousin to three countesses and one marquesa, and her cousin ran the court for the King of Portugal.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the Lord Chamberlain of King John II, who was already Lord Chamberlain in 1475, 4 years before she married,
Mhm.
was cousin of Colon's wife. So for this guy to marry into this family, he had to be at her level or higher,
For sure.
you
Oh
know?
yeah.
Okay. Not only that, King John held regular meetings with him about discovery matters. Okay.
Mhm.
At the request of the king. Matter of fact, when he was in Spain, 1488, the king sent him a letter, says, I want you to come to Lisbon, to come to Portugal right away. Your ingenuity and expertise is very important, necessary to us, and you should come right away. Don't hesitate. And whatever's owed you, you will be paid. That you'll be very happy.
So today, today, a lot of people look at this in today's standard, and they think, "Oh, Spain beat Portugal to like the riches of the Americas," but that was never the conquest at the time. At the time, it was reaching the Asian commerce, right? It was each.
Yeah.
So that was the race. So America ended up, and we already knew about it. So it ended up becoming a distraction. So basically, Christopher Columbus was like a double agent, huh?
Yes.
He
There
went
was
to
his whole
Spain
reason
to
for being in
distract them,
Spain.
so
There
they
was
would
his
get.
whole reason for being in Spain.
So he went there to distract, so they can be distracted in a whole like new continent that had nothing to offer except soil.
Right.
Because that's
So,
because that right
yes.
because
So
there was no commerce at the time, right?
this book that I just published last year,
Uh-huh. Yes.
1494, King John II and the Secret of Brazil,
Yes.
proves without a doubt that Brazil was already known to the Portuguese king before 1492.
For sure,
Before, yes.
because
Okay.
they've also fought so much for that Tratado Tordesillas for a reason. They knew what they had there waiting for them. Except
Of course.
first they
There
wanted to
was,
establish the trade route.
well, the whole coast of America, from Canada to Brazil, was already 80-90% of it was known.
So they had already
It,
came down everything.
yes, they might have had,
Yeah.
some, they might not have had it, all mapped out.
Yeah, yeah.
But the 1424 map of the Antilles already has Nova Scotia. It has the Americas from Cape Hatteras in North Carolina to Long Island, and it has Florida, 1424. Okay, and so what happens is they would scout out all these territories systematically because, like I said earlier, this was a national project.
Mhm.
This was a it was there was a committee that kind of governed these discoveries. The whole group of scientists,
Mhm.
and what they would do is they would just go systematically. Travel this parallel, go see what you find, come back. Next year we'll go a little bit further south, a little bit further south. And just keep going. And so they had mapped this whole territory, but it was mainly forest.
Mhm.
So when you're setting up a fleet to go somewhere, you're going to have to hire men, you're going to have to
Sure.
prepare food and all this stuff.
Mhm.
And you're going to go sail, for a month, reach
Month?
something.
Yeah.
or 2 months, however long it is,
Yeah.
because whatever. I'm saying sail for a month because
Yeah. Yeah.
crossing the Atlantic, is about a month, to cross over from Europe, Portugal, from the Azores, over to Canada, whatever's a month, um, or less, doesn't matter. You're going to
Yeah.
sail for a month. You're going to get over there, and then you got to sail back, and you didn't bring anything to sell, right?
Exactly.
So it's all the exploration was done at a loss,
At a loss. Yeah.
right? So they had to supply the ship with food for the outgoing voyage and the return voyage, because
Mm,
if you flew to Copenhagen, and you
mm,
went to sell wheat over there, right? You sold your wheat, you could resupply your ship with food and come back,
yes.
but you couldn't do that in Canada,
And the whole of the
right?
Americas. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. There was no cities, there was no ports to dock in, you
Yeah.
know. There was no cities, no ports, no place where you could resupply the food to come back.
Yeah.
So they did exactly what Cologne did in 1492. They packed food for the outgoing voyage and the return
Mm,
voyage, because they
yeah.
knew they could not resupply over there. So all that exploration was done at a loss.
At a
It was
loss.
just for the information. There were scientists.
Hmm.
And so, they mapped that whole coast all the way down to Brazil. You know, I'm
Hmm.
assuming they did not go into too far into the Gulf of Mexico,
Mm.
because they probably would have run into the
The
Aztecs or whoever.
yeah. 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 Where
They,
they had a higher
they
civilization.
they probably hit Florida and kept going south. I don't know,
Mm,
but Brazil was already there,
hmm.
and so they decided to give that to Spain, keeping Brazil for themselves,
Hmm.
because it's there's not there's they hadn't found anything worth keeping for themselves, to put it that
Hmm.
way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If
At
they
the
had
time,
found
because
if they had
nowadays people
found in the
imagine
Americas,
America, but back then it was nothing.
right? If they had found in the American coast what they had found in Africa,
Yeah.
that would not have happened. They would have just done the same thing they did in Africa. They would open trading posts,
Yes.
you know, and they would have started, trading back and forth.
Trading.
Instead,
Yeah.
they just kept the discovery secret, you know.
Hmm.
The only word that had to Portugal was the knowledge that it existed. And so they decided in 1484, when Isabel was trying to kill King John II
Hmm.
to get access to the African trade, John decided to send Cologne to Spain as a double agent, to
Yeah.
take
That's
him
where
to
it
that
comes in.
known land, to take him to this land that they knew already existed,
Yeah.
convince him it's something worth keeping, and then we will force them into this treaty that's going to tie them on that side of the wall, of the border, of the line.
And it
You
took
know,
him 7 or 8 years to convince them, right?
yes, because they thought he was trying to trick them. They even say
Yeah.
that. His brother even says that. When in 1515 and whenever it was, when there was a dispute, some kind of dispute, his brother wrote, Bartholomew, he wrote, and when my brother and I were at your court presenting this, everybody was telling us that we're trying to trick you. Well, they did there. That's exactly what they were doing. They did trick them. You know,
Eventually.
I
Yeah.
mean, that was the whole mission.
So he was a successful agent.
He succeeded.
Yeah.
Coming back in 1493, March 1493, his mission was done. He had
Yeah.
shown them the land. He had told
They
them,
they got
he had
focused
he had
over
told them
there.
to get. He had told them to write to the Pope, ask
Mhm.
for a line of division, which is
Mhm.
exactly what Portugal wanted, so they could, keep them on that side of the line.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Pope, because it was a Spanish Pope, especially, granted that right away.
Mhm.
All the lands 100 leagues west of the Azores belong to Spain.
Because
And that's
precisely
how.
there, the next 80 years was when Portugal became like the biggest empire in the world. When they were going to Asia and coming back, they dominated that completely for a period.
Right. So at that point, after that, so you realize that Vasco da Gama didn't leave until the Treaty of Tordesillas was signed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So they rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488. The
yeah.
the the ocean was already open.
'Cause it
but they
that's
didn't
right, 'cause
go.
it took a
But in
while.
'89 they didn't go.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
didn't go in '89
It
or
took
'90
because
or '91 or
exactly.
'92 or '93. You know,
Yeah,
they kept waiting for the secret agent in Spain, Colon, to succeed in
to
his
succeed
mission.
with the mission.
Exactly. And so much did they want him to succeed that the King of Portugal wrote a letter to him saying, "I'm ready to sponsor your voyage." Okay, sign whatever. And he had the King of England and the King of France also write a letter saying they're ready to sponsor
To
the
pressure
voyage.
Spain to do it.
Exactly. And this is what the guy, the discoverer himself said, sometime later, he said, the Queen had already died. He
Mm.
said, I think it was 1455, 1505. He said, God miraculously sent me here to serve only your highness because I had offers from 3 princes that I turned down just to serve you. I decided not to agree with Portugal, not England, nor France, just to save this for you. Why? Because only Spain was Portugal's enemy at the time in Europe. So that's how this story, and now everything makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Putting it that way, for sure.
so so we have a guy who's not named Columbus but Cologne, and
Cologne.
that's a false name. That's a
Yeah.
false identity because his real name was being hidden because of his father. The
Mhm.
courts were protecting his father. People corrupted his name outside of Spain to Colombo and Columbus, right? So they start looking for the wrong guy. The Italians start to forge documents to claim him for themselves. Okay. The historians come along 300 years later and start digging in Spain looking for this guy, and they find these false documents, you know,
Now we're in a big
and
mess.
and now they start writing that he's from Italy, which helped the original plan, by the way, very well, because if they
Yeah,
think he's from Italy,
yeah,
they're never going to guess he's from Portugal.
for
They
sure.
will never find out who his father was, which was the initial reason why he changed his name.
It's very intriguing. It's very good stuff.
But now I know
Very
who his father was.
yeah.
So, all that effort it protected the secret for 500 years, but they were never counting on me coming along.
Yeah, but now you came along and you did the work. So now we gotta push this out there somehow, and it has to be told. And people in Portugal need to back this up.
Yeah, unfortunately, a year ago, when Spain started to say that he's this Jewish guy from Valencia, man, I spent days and days trying to call CNN,
They don't
Fox,
want it.
Time,
They'd rather leave it as it is.
Luz, Diário de Notícias, the Chicago Times, the New York Times, the Washington Post. I spent days and days and days. I could not get one person
But
to return a
sometimes it
call.
almost feels like it's because of it's like because it's Portugal. Like it's like they discredit us almost. Like because if it was another nation,
No,
maybe they would take
it's
it on.
because you cannot contact these people. Have no way to contact them. You
Mm.
know, there's no way that you can just call up, CNN and say, I want to talk to, our Fox News, and, I want to talk to
Everything
Sean
gets
Hannity. And
filtered before.
exactly. Or who are
Mhm.
you? Well, I'm the guy who discovered that the Columbus history was false. Oh, yeah, right. Call back next year. you
Because
know?
it's not like you're an everyday Joe like me. Like I went to the internet and I read stuff. No, you did scientific investigative
Yeah.
research.
hmm
So
hmm
it's not like me saying it. It's like you are saying it. Yeah. A doctor,
yes,
PhD scientist.
right. And I have copies of all the documents,
That's it.
you know? And so, when I say that I have copies of the documents, I can show you. It's a document from the court.
Yeah.
I want you to look at the name,
Cologne. Yeah, yeah.
Don Cristobal Colon.
Don Christopher Cologne. Yeah.
Okay. So Columbus is a fantasy, But I'll
Columbus is
tell you, I'll give you the real proof that they're not the same person. So up to now, I have given you I've given you all the logic and all the stuff that
yes,
shows they're not the
yes.
same
Everything was
person,
very
right?
logical and sound.
Okay. So I'll give you one solid proof that they're not the same person. Aside from the fact that a peasant could not marry this noble lady in Portugal,
Makes no sense.
aside from that the guy did not speak Italian,
Yeah,
supposedly in Italian. Aside from that, when he came back in 1493 on the first return voyage, he wrote to the kings of Spain, and he said, "Remember, your highnesses, I left my wife, my children, and I came from my homeland to serve you."
there you go. He came from Portugal to
Okay,
serve him.
right. So that's the only time in all like 50 letters that he left behind where he comes close to saying where he comes from. But here's the proof, 100%, that he was not the Italian guy. So if you search for Columbus anywhere and you search for his date of birth, they're going to tell you he was born around August of 1451, right?
Okay.
They say he was born August 1451 in Genoa, son of Italian weaver.
Hmm.
And the document that they use for that is called the Asseretto document. And the Asseretto document is another forgery, but we won't get too deep into that. Was published in 1904 by General Asseretto, supposedly found it, but doesn't matter. So they have two documents in Italy that say that the discoverer was
Hmm.
born in 1451. They
Okay.
have a notary document when he was 19 years old, from 1470, I think it was, where he says, he's at a notary, and he says, "I'm over 19 years old. I'm
Hmm.
older than 19." And then they have this other document that came out in 1904. That is the Asseretto document, where he says he's 27 years old in 1479. Okay, that's the documents. Nobody questions the date on these documents, right? So this is the Asseretto document. I have it here all mapped out. People can. This is on my PhD dissertation.
Hmm.
The Asseretto document says that he was 27 years old in 1479. The Italian guy, the Colombo guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, 27 years old in 1479. In 1503, the discoverer was marooned in Jamaica, and he wrote to the court of Spain, and he said, "Remember, your highnesses, I came to serve you when I was 28 years old." And he went to serve them in 1484.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So he was born in 1456. All right, that's all we need,
The dates don't match up yet.
huh?
Yeah, the dates say
No,
it
they're
tells it
5 years
all.
apart.
Oh yeah.
That's all you need. Okay, so you don't need any more than that. And so all the other stuff that was logical, that they're not the same person.
Yeah,
These two documents prove they're not the same person. Okay,
for sure.
that is why. Professor João Paulo Oliveira Costa, wrote in the preface of my PhD dissertation that not only was the discoverer Portuguese, he was from Portuguese aristocracy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What?
I
I
know. I'm
cannot
tripping
speak
on it
English.
too, but I
Yeah.
know what it is. I'm tripping on it too.
Aristocrata. I can say it in Portuguese.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know what I'm
aristocratic.
saying.
Yeah, yeah.
He
In
was
English,
he
it's not
was
coming to mind right now.
he was high nobility. He was royal blood.
Oh yeah. No, without a doubt.
So
It's very fascinating
anyway, so
stuff.
this is the book that proves 100% Columbus was not Colon. my PhD dissertation.
If you were
So
to okay, I
go ahead.
I was just I was just gonna ask, if you were to you wrote 13 books, you said, right?
Yes.
If you were to, like, pick up one, almost like a business card, like someone to learn about what you do, like, what book would you offer for them to have first out of all your
Well, if
books?
you're Portuguese, you're going to read
This is
this
the one?
one.
Alright.
So I'll tell you my process.
Okay.
Um, so the first book was my investigation up to 15 years,
Okay.
right? So this book was put out in 2019. So this
Okay.
book surpasses all the other books.
Okay. I get it, yeah.
Okay. So this is the investigation current up to 2019.
What would be the
Okay.
chances you can make a copy of that in English too? Is it really difficult?
Make a copy in English.
Not one, but, like, have a series, like, in English, let's say, like,
Well, no,
for
I have Columbus: The Untold Story
okay.
is up to 2016. Okay.
Okay.
So this has 3 years less than what's in that one. So you're going to have
Yes.
a few things. You're going to have a few more information in the Portuguese
Yeah.
one that is not in this, but this book is 90% of what that one is.
Okay. Okay, good
Okay.
stuff to know.
So so what you're going to miss here is just some new documents, some more proof, right?
Okay.
So as the investigation goes on, I find more and more proof, and
Mhm.
that goes on to the new books. But this is a very good book to get a whole overall um,
Columbus, the Untold Story.
information. Like the thing I told you about his sister-in-law living
Yeah,
in Seville
yeah,
before we knew she was living in Seville, already. I mean, that's when he went to Spain, he was going to leave his son, his little young 4-year-old son,
yeah.
with his sister-in-law, right?
Mm.
Who was living in that time. But I did not know that the Duke of Medina Sidonia had given her a house and land. I found that afterwards. So, these are little things that are important, that suddenly,
Yeah, help to
become more
build
and
the
more
narrative for
important.
sure.
So as you go along, you find more and more things that support that he was Portuguese and support that he was very high nobleman in Portugal.
Mm.
And so as you go along, it reinforces all the facts, just reinforce more and more, you know, his identity and what he was doing in Spain.
Sometimes I almost feel like I almost feel betrayed by our own government that they don't push this out more, because they must know. There must
That's
be
funny
documents
because
that
I
they
have a
know.
picture of Marcel Rebelo de Souza with this book,
Okay, good.
right? He has this book. I have a picture with him in this book. I have a picture of him at the Feira do Livro
Okay,
buying this book,
nice. Okay, good.
you know, but he hasn't done anything,
That's the problem. It's like
maybe he
they're
hasn't read
afraid,
it,
but you could
you
tell
know.
even in today's politics, you could tell they're not too much for national pride anymore.
Well, this is not pride. This
I
is
know, but
truth.
it's
It's very
story, it's
different.
history.
It's very different. You see, I'm going to show you something. Um, this is my PhD dissertation.
And the truth will set you free. Yeah.
Okay, that's the first page of my dissertation. You know what's the first page on my Portuguese book?
Pelo amor da verdade. É isso aí.
All right. So so this has nothing to do with it's
The truth.
just passing out the truth. Exactly.
Mhm. Good stuff.
Okay.
So maybe just repeat one more time your website so people can look for your books and buy your stuff.
Well, it's mdrosa.com.
Okay.
mdrosa.com. So MD as in doctor.
Yeah.
It's actually the initials for Manuel da Silva Rosa, but
Manuel
you
da
can
Silva Rosa. Yeah.
MD as in Dr.
Uh,
Rosa, mdrosa.com.
yeah.
Very simple.
Nice. Nice stuff.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question, like, on a side note.
Sure.
For example, you know how people, when they say the discoveries is fake because the Vikings already made it to Canada and so on. But would it the
Yes, they
difference
made it to
be?
Canada.
Yeah, but wouldn't the difference be that they they didn't technically discover in the fact that they lost themselves to Canada because they never went back. It's like they lost themselves to a new land, right? Or did they go back and
No,
forth?
no, no. I think. Well, they had a colony in Greenland until
Yes, yes.
1408.
Yeah.
Till 1408. So I don't really know because that stuff is not documented,
Yeah.
But you can imagine that whoever came to Canada,
Hmm.
you know, unless their boat sank and they couldn't build another one to return, you know,
Hmm.
that they would have sailed back and forth, you
But
know.
unless it was a hard ride and they didn't want to sacrifice it, because like the Portuguese, when they were going down the coast of Africa, they would lose sometimes half of their tripulation. Like they would lose a lot of
Well,
people.
they lost a lot of ships. That's true, and they
Yeah.
lost a lot of people. But that's a little different thing. They were in a scientific
Mm,
expedition for almost 200 years, right?
yes.
So the Portuguese had tried to conquer the Canary Islands in 1320 or so.
Hmm.
So they had already been in this ocean-going discovery and scientific mission for a long time. The Vikings, from what I understand is he was like running away, he was being persecuted, and so he ran. I think he had committed the murder or something. I don't remember
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah,
But anyway, he made it to Canada, and they
yeah.
they stayed there. Now, what I'm trying to say is, unless the ship sank, you know, they would
Hmm.
have sailed back and forth,
Right.
between
Yeah,
Greenland and Iceland and Denmark and Norway
yeah,
and whatever, because they were there for 400 years. I mean, we know
yeah.
that they had a colony in Greenland for 400
Hmm.
years until 1408. So, if they were in Greenland until 1408, then, it wasn't just one voyage, it
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
colony. It was
yeah, yeah, for
sailing
sure.
back and forth. But there's no records of that
Yeah,
because that's not what they did. Nobody
yeah.
kept records. Why are they going to keep records?
No,
I'm going to go.
their mentality was just seeking a new land to prosper and plant stuff and live. Yeah,
Well, I mean, I don't think they, the from what we know of the Vikings, they were happy just taking other people's stuff, right? I don't know how much they could take from the natives in Newfoundland. I find it hard to believe that they would not have been traveling back and forth for 400 years. Okay,
yeah,
the reason we don't know is because it was not normal to register these voyages. You didn't like go to the harbor master and say and put down the plan. Oh, I'm sailing over there, and then I'll be back in 3 months or
yeah,
whatever. They just went and they came back and they whatever whatever they
yeah.
were
I
doing
get
with their
it.
lives.
There wasn't a
And
scientific method to it when they were doing it.
and so it was not really. It's not like when the Discoverer returned in 1493 and he made this press release. It was intentional to let the world know the land was
Yeah,
here.
it's a
That
different
was part of the
motivation.
plan. It was part of the mission.
Yeah.
Whereas all the other discoveries were kept secret because that was part of the mission. You know, the Portuguese discovered Australia around 1522. Okay, 1522. That's
That's
already on the map. It's already on the map a French map in 1445. Right? The French map copied the Portuguese map in 1545, 1547, the
yeah,
Valart Atlas, whatever it is. It's in Los Angeles. The Portuguese discovered Australia. Well, I say 1522 because that's most likely when it happened, but
yeah.
certainly before 1545, 1547, when this French map is done,
Yeah.
right? Before 1547, when this French map is done, the Portuguese had already sailed almost all of the coast of Australia, right?
Mhm.
They never told anyone.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
A
it
matter of
was like the
fact,
Americas. They hadn't told anyone. Yeah.
right. As a matter of fact, when whoever went to discover that 200 years later, the Portuguese never said anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The only way we know is finding this map from 1547.
Didn't they credit Australia to the English guy like 200 years later or something?
Yes, that's what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
200 years later.
Yeah.
Do you think the Portuguese came up and said, no, no, no,
Uh,
we've
yeah,
known
yeah.
that we've been trading with those guys for 200 years.
Yeah.
They didn't say anything because it was
Mhm.
part of their way that they operated. It was more important to keep the land secret,
Yeah.
where they could use it as they saw fit without anyone interfering,
Hmm.
than it was to let people know that the land was there, and then they have competition.
Yeah, that's
Because
right.
there's no way Portugal could ever take over Australia.
Yeah, yeah.
Portugal is a little country of a
Yeah,
million
that's the
people.
whole thing. The whole Portuguese method had to be like that because it was small population. Everything is in smaller numbers.
Right. So that's all these things are, and the funny thing, very funny, is I have discussions with historians in Portugal. They're like, hey, this map proves Australia was discovered before 1547 by the Portuguese. You believe that map? What's there to What's there to believe? Go look at the map. Have you looked at it? No, but go look at it. I mean, the names are in Portuguese, and it's from
Yeah.
1547, and it's the coast of Australia. What's to laugh about?
Yeah.
You know,
There's a certain
it's
arrogance.
just
I know.
crazy mentality. You know, crazy stuff
I
that I
know.
cannot understand. You figure that the Portuguese historians would be the first ones. Hey, we got to go look at that map. We have to go to
I know, but
LA and look at this
unfortunately,
map in
it's
person.
insane.
Huh?
Yeah,
You
you would
figure they would
figure,
all,
but
as soon as they
unfortunately,
found out
that's not
about
what happened.
as soon as they found out about this map in the Los Angeles library, wherever it is, museum, wherever it is in Los Angeles, as soon as they learned about this in Portugal, they should have formed a committee and gone to Los Angeles, you know, and look at the map and publish a scientific study on the map, proving that the
Yeah.
Portuguese had discovered Australia before 1547. But instead of doing that, they criticize anyone who believes the map.
It's the Portuguese arrogant side.
You
We
know,
have that side too to us.
it's crazy.
It is. It's mind blowing.
Anyway, that's I get you. You see, I'm getting aggravated
I
because
know.
it's
You have your life work of
it's
investigation
it's
into
not
this.
like it's they'll argue with me that the Columbus last will is not a forgery when I've proven it's a forgery. You
Yeah.
know, and then they will argue with me that the maps are not worth looking at, even though the maps are authentic from 15, 1547,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy stuff.
And that's what I'm up against,
Dr.
you know.
Manuel Rosa, I can't explain to you how happy I am that you took your time to share some knowledge with us and share some of what you've learned and
I
investigated over
appreciate
the
it,
years.
and thanks for letting me yell at you.
No, I love this. I want to do it again. Maybe in a nearby future we can do like a part two. Maybe we can go a little deeper into your 1494 book. Maybe a little bit, talk about a
1494.
little bit
Sure,
about
we
the
can go.
Brazils and
Yeah,
whatnot.
that's sure.
That would be
Yeah, we can talk
amazing
about
too.
that.
Oh yeah.
All right.
So we'll keep this segment more or less wrapped around Columbus and what we've
Okay.
discovered today. I appreciate it
It's
so
already
much.
been
Okay?
an hour and a half. That's already too long.
No, no, I'm sure you have much more to tell if you want to really go deep into it. You have so much,
Oh yeah, there's.
but I wanted to scratch the surface.
Yeah,
I wanted to scratch the surface. Hopefully, people get intrigued.
I have 35 years of stuff in my head. Unfortunately, I'm beginning to lose my memory, so it's not.
Oh,
It's. I fear that in 10 years I might not remember half of it.
oh. So
But
we gotta tackle it
luckily,
now while you still got it.
yeah, I have to do podcasts like this so I can
That's right.
put it
So
out
the word
there.
can get out
So
there.
so that I can talk about it now while I still remember it.
That's great stuff. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
All right, Steve.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much. I'll catch you around and let's do this part two. Maybe we'll go deeper into that Brazil story. That would be interesting
Boa
too.
noite, boa saúde.
Boa noite. Um abraço.
See ya.